Chosen one, listen carefully, because what you did recently was not ordinary and it was not invisible. Something shifted. Not metaphorically, not emotionally, not in the way people exaggerate small victories to comfort themselves. It shifted in reality, in structure, in alignment. You may have thought it was a quiet decision, a subtle refusal, a private act of integrity, a moment of mercy, a boundary set without applause. But that moment travelled. It echoed. It was registered in places you cannot see, yet undeniably influenced. What felt small to you was recorded, measured, and reclassified. What once would have been labelled deviation is now recognised as precision. This was never meant to happen the way it did, and yet it did because you acted from alignment rather than fear. That is why this moment is different from every previous one. Acceleration begins now. If you feel that internal pressure rising as you hear this, that is confirmation. Do not dismiss it. Anchor yourself here, like this message. Subscribe if you're ready to move consciously into what is unfolding. Write 99 in the comments as a declaration that you understand this is not entertainment but activation. Share this with someone who has felt the same invisible shift but could not name it. Stay present through every word, because what comes next is not inspiration alone. It is orientation. You're not being hyped, you're being aligned. And alignment changes everything. What once looked like an error is now being revealed as alignment, and this reframing is not symbolic comfort but structural truth. There were seasons when your actions were misunderstood by others and doubted by yourself. You questioned whether you moved too soon, spoke too clearly, withdrew too abruptly, forgave too freely, or refused too firmly. There were whispers around you suggesting that you had deviated from the expected path, that you were out of step, too intense, too principled, too unwilling to conform. But what was labelled deviation has now been recognised as prophecy unfolding in real time. Divine structure was never broken by your courage. It evolved because of it. The higher realms do not operate on fragile systems that collapse under authentic action. They expand when consciousness matures. When you acted from clarity rather than compliance, you introduced a refinement that required adjustment. What appeared as disagreement in unseen realms was not rejection. It was recalibration. Systems adjusting to incorporate a frequency they had not yet accounted for. You were not rebelling. You were aligning with a deeper truth than the visible structure could yet express. That is why cause and effect are beginning to collapse into immediacy for you now. Resonance replaces delay. Decisions respond faster. Doors shift with less friction. Conversations carry weight without force. This is not luck, and it is not favoritism. It is coherence. When internal alignment reaches a certain threshold, reality responds with reduced resistance. Think of it as moving from pushing against water to flowing with a current that was always there. Your past actions were training your nervous system to hold clarity under pressure. Every misunderstood moment built capacity. Every quiet stand strengthened coherence between intention and behavior. Now that coherence emits a stable signal, and stable signals reorganize environments. What once required repetition now requires recognition. What once required proof now requires presence. You're discovering that alignment is more powerful than performance. That precision outweighs approval. That truth, when embodied rather than announced, reorganizes systems quietly but permanently. This is why acceleration feels subtle yet undeniable. It is not chaos speeding up, it is friction dissolving. And when friction dissolves, movement feels natural. You're not forcing outcomes anymore. You're meeting them. The reclassification of your so-called errors marks the end of self-doubt as an operating system. You're no longer questioning whether you misstepped. You're recognizing that you were positioning. Even the moments that looked like loss were realignment. Even the silence that felt like isolation was integration. The structure did not collapse because you challenged it. It absorbed you and became more accurate. That is evolution. And as this evolution unfolds, you're no longer standing at the edge observing divine motion. You've crossed into authorship. The shift from observer to creator is not loud, it is decisive. There was a time when you watched circumstances, reacted to events, analysed patterns, and waited for confirmation before moving. Now you initiate from awareness. Your recent action added a luminous thread to the cosmic tapestry, not by spectacle but by precision. Imagine an intricate design woven across time, each thread representing choice, intention, consequence. You did not tear the fabric. You introduced a new pattern that required expansion. You composed a melody the orchestra had not rehearsed, and instead of discord, it produced dimension. Divine order did not fracture under your originality. It expanded to accommodate it. That is the nature of living systems. They grow when engaged consciously. Prophecy is not a rigid script dictating passive obedience. It is a dynamic field responding to awakened participation. You embodied it. You moved from asking what is allowed to demonstrating what is aligned. That difference is everything. When you act as a conscious co-creator, you stop waiting for permission to exist fully. You recognize that awareness itself carries authority. This does not inflate ego, it dissolves it. Because co-creation requires responsibility, it requires understanding that each choice imprints the field. Each act of mercy redirects trajectories. Each refusal to participate in distortion creates space for clarity. You're no longer experimenting with alignment, you're expressing it. That expression reshapes probabilities. Timelines that once seemed fixed reveal flexibility. Outcomes that seemed delayed reveal preparation. You begin to see that reality is more responsive than you were taught. Not because it bends to demand, but because it mirrors coherence. When your internal state stabilizes around truth, the external begins to synchronize. This is the deeper meaning of stepping into authorship. You're not controlling existence. You're collaborating with it. The tapestry continues to grow, and now your thread is deliberate. Your melody is intentional. Your presence is contributive. Divine order expands not because it lacked power, but because it welcomes participation. And you have moved from standing beneath it to standing within it, not as a spectator, but as a conscious fragment shaping its next expression. What looked like separation was never separation at all, and understanding this is where your perception begins to mature beyond fear into mastery. When you acted, there were moments of visible tension. People withdrew, systems reacted. Certain energies that once flowed toward you seemed to pause or rearrange themselves. It was easy to interpret that as division, as though your courage had fractured unity. But unity in divinity is not uniformity, it is resonance. And resonance requires differentiation before harmony can be heard clearly. Apparent division was actually expansion. When a new frequency enters a space, it does not blend instantly. It reorganizes the field so that coherence can increase. Your consciousness introduced a refinement that required recalibration, not rejection. The framework did not split because of you. It stretched, it made room. Separation is a human fear rooted in scarcity thinking, in the belief that if one rises, another must fall, that if one voice strengthens, another must weaken. But addition is a divine principle. Creation multiplies without subtracting. Like a new star igniting in the night sky, your presence did not dim the constellations that already existed. It increased brilliance. It expanded navigation. It offered new reference points for those still traveling through darkness. The discomfort that sometimes follows growth is not evidence of error. It is evidence of integration in progress. When you chose alignment over approval, you introduced a tone that exposed what was misaligned around you. That exposure can feel like separation because not everything can resonate at the same frequency. but what cannot resonate must recalibrate or release. This is not cruelty, it is coherence. Your consciousness enriched the framework because it demonstrated that unity does not mean sameness. It means many expressions harmonizing without erasing their distinctness. The divine does not demand conformity, it invites contribution, and your contribution required space. That space felt like distance to those who were accustomed to your previous pattern, but it was actually expansion into accuracy. You were not leaving unity, you were redefining it. You were proving that harmony deepens when truth is embodied rather than suppressed. The new star does not apologize for shining. It fulfills its nature, and in doing so it helps others orient themselves more clearly. This is what your presence is doing now. It is increasing clarity. It is amplifying brilliance. It is expanding what unity can contain. And as this realization settles in, you begin to understand that you are never meant to approach divinity as a distant seeker waiting at the threshold. Many people approach the sacred as supplicants. They ask permission to belong. They negotiate for worthiness. They measure themselves against imagined hierarchies and hope to earn inclusion. But you arrived differently. You did not come begging to be accepted. You came embodying what you had realized. There is a profound distinction between seeking divinity externally and recognizing it internally. Authority flows from realization, not hierarchy. When you know who you are in alignment with truth, you do not need to announce it. You radiate it. Sacred inclusion is not granted like a membership badge handed down by a gatekeeper. It is recognized through coherence. When awareness stabilizes within you, the framework responds not because you demanded recognition, but because resonance cannot be ignored. Your presence carries influence without force. It challenges rigid structures not through rebellion, but through authenticity. There is something disarming about someone who stands calmly in their alignment. It unsettles systems that rely on insecurity to maintain control. It questions hierarchies that assume authority is inherited rather than embodied. You're not claiming divinity as status. You're expressing it as responsibility. Divinity thrives wherever awakened consciousness exists. It does not reside exclusively in temples, titles, or traditions. It manifests wherever clarity meets courage. And that is why your embodiment carries weight. You're no longer searching for sacred ground. You're standing on it. You're not asking to be part of the design. You're participating in its unfolding. This does not inflate ego. It refines it. Because embodiment requires accountability. It requires living in such a way that your choices reflect your awareness. When authority flows from realization, it does not dominate. It stabilizes. It creates safety through coherence. It influences through consistency. Those around you feel this even if they cannot articulate it. They sense that you're not performing alignment. You're living it. And living alignment shifts environments without spectacle. It reorganizes conversations. It alters expectations. It inspires courage in others who are ready. This is why embodiment is more powerful than aspiration. Aspiration looks upward. Embodiment stands present, and presence is transformative. From this place of embodiment, the power of conscious choice becomes unmistakable, and you begin to see that choice is not a trivial mechanism for navigating daily life, but a declaration of identity at every level of existence. Each decision you make is not simply a response to circumstance. It is a statement about who you are becoming. When you chose differently recently, you did not just alter an outcome. You clarified your trajectory. Every decision reshapes unseen pathways. There are intersections in reality where probabilities converge, and the direction taken determines which potentials become actualized. Your intentional action redefined sacred outcomes because it was rooted in clarity rather than compulsion. Clarity of intention outweighs speed or obedience. The world often rewards urgency and compliance. It praises those who act quickly and conform easily. But the cosmos honors coherence. It responds to the alignment between awareness and action. When what you know internally matches what you choose externally, resonance intensifies. This is why your recent decision carried such weight. It was not rushed, it was not reactive, it was deliberate, and deliberateness carries power. When awareness and action synchronize, reality reorganizes around that coherence. You may not see every trajectory that shifted because of your choice, but trust that more change than you can currently measure. Some outcomes dissolved quietly, some opportunities moved closer, some timelines accelerated. You did not force this, you aligned with it. The difference between manipulation and manifestation lies in intention. Manipulation attempts to control outcomes through fear. Manifestation emerges from clarity meeting readiness. You embodied the latter, and that embodiment signaled to the larger framework that you are no longer operating unconsciously. The cosmos does not punish unconsciousness, it educates it. But when consciousness matures, the response becomes more immediate. Cause and effect shorten their distance. Feedback becomes faster. Synchronicity increases. Not because you're favored, but because you're coherent. This is the deeper power of conscious choice. It is not about getting what you want. It is about becoming who you are. And as you become more aligned, the field around you reflects that alignment with increasing precision. Then there is the part that most misunderstand, the season that felt like nothing was happening. The stretch of time when movement seemed stalled and progress invisible. Rising does not always look like ascent. Often it feels like stillness. What seemed like stagnation was preparation. Stillness was internal elevation. Beneath the surface of your visible life, recalibration was occurring. Old narratives were dissolving. Emotional reflexes were softening. Patterns were being examined and either integrated or released. True rising occurs beneath the surface before manifestation becomes visible. A seed does not announce its growth while it is still under soil. Yet everything necessary for emergence is already underway. Transformation often happens in hidden dimensions where awareness reorganizes itself quietly. There were moments when you questioned whether you were falling behind, whether others were advancing while you remained suspended. But timing follows divine rhythm, not urgency. Urgency belongs to fear. Rhythm belongs to alignment. Your stillness was not delay. It was gestation. Internal coherence was stabilizing so that when action resumed, it would be accurate rather than impulsive. This is why when you finally moved, the movement carried impact. It was backed by integration. Rising that skips stillness often collapses under pressure because it lacks foundation. But rising that emerges from preparation endures. You are building depth. You are refining perception. You are strengthening discernment. The quiet season taught you to distinguish between noise and intuition, between pressure and guidance. That discernment is now part of your operating system. And because of it, your actions carry less distortion. They're not fueled by the need to prove, they're guided by the desire to align. This is what makes your current acceleration sustainable. It is not adrenaline-driven, it is coherence-driven. The divine rhythm does not rush, it unfolds, and you've learned to trust unfolding over forcing. That trust is maturity. That patience is strength. And that strength is what now supports your next movement. You are not behind, you're aligned. You are not stagnant, you are integrating. And because you allowed stillness to shape you rather than break you, your rise now carries stability. What once felt silent was sacred. What once felt paused was positioning. And what once felt uncertain was actually alignment deepening beyond the need for external validation. As you continue stepping into this deeper awareness, You begin to understand that you are never meant to dissolve into the whole as something indistinguishable, but to function as a fragment that expands it. The universe is not a single monolithic force operating in rigid sameness. It is a mosaic of conscious fragments, each carrying perspective, depth, nuance, and potential. A mosaic only becomes breathtaking when each piece retains its color and shape while contributing to the greater image. You're one of those luminous fragments, not accidental, not misplaced, not redundant. You are positioned to illuminate a path that did not exist in visible form until you walked it. Multiplicity does not threaten unity, it refines it. The fear that individual consciousness could destabilize the divine whole is rooted in misunderstanding. True unity is not fragile, it is dynamic. Like constellations scattered across a night sky, fragments appear separate from one another. Yet together they create patterns that guide generations. Sailors once navigated entire oceans by reading stars that seemed isolated. In reality, those stars formed systems of orientation. Your awakening functions the same way. What appears as your personal clarity is in truth collective navigation. When you stabilized your frequency, when you refused distortion, when you aligned with truth rather than expectation, you demonstrated fluidity within divine systems. You proved that the sacred is not rigid. It breathes, it adapts, it integrates. The framework did not need you to shrink in order to maintain order. It needed you to shine so that its depth could increase. Each fragment that awakens adds dimension. Each conscious being who embodies alignment increases the resolution of the whole. You are not competing with other lights, you're contributing to a greater illumination. And in doing so, you reveal a profound truth: the divine expands through participation, not submission. You did not fragment unity, you revealed its capacity. You did not stand outside the design, you became an active pixel within it, sharpening its clarity. With that expansion comes something many overlook: the sacred weight of accountability within divine harmony. Individual responsibility remains sacred even within infinite systems. You're not a passive observer watching destiny unfold around you. You're an agent of transformation. Every conscious decision you make leaves an imprint on the field. This is not meant to burden you. It is meant to empower you. Accountability is not punishment, it is participation. When you understand that your awareness shapes outcomes, you move differently. You speak with intention. You choose with clarity. You pause when necessary. Conscious service reshapes entire systems because it introduces integrity into motion. Systems, whether human or divine, evolve when integrity becomes active within them. Your life models this integrity within divine equilibrium. There were moments when you could have acted unconsciously, reacted from old patterns, chosen convenience over truth. But you did not, and that restraint was not weakness, it was sovereignty. Accountability means recognizing that your energy influences environments. It means understanding that neutrality is often an illusion. Even silence carries frequency. Even inaction carries consequence. But when awareness guides behavior, those consequences align with evolution rather than regression. You're not here to be swept by currents of unconscious repetition. You're here to steer within them consciously. That is why your role matters. That is why your alignment matters. Accountability empowers expansion because it prevents chaos disguised as freedom. It channels power responsibly. The cosmos honors those who act with deliberate awareness because such action strengthens coherence rather than distorting it. You're not expected to be perfect. You're expected to be conscious, and consciousness carries authority. When others observe your consistency, your refusal to betray your clarity, your willingness to own your decisions without projecting blame, they witness a model of divine equilibrium in motion. Your integrity becomes instructive without preaching. Your presence becomes stabilizing without dominating. This is leadership without ego. This is influence without coercion, and within divine harmony, this kind of accountability amplifies everything it touches. From that foundation of responsibility emerges a force far more transformative than most. Realize the power of mercy expressed consciously. Your recent act of mercy altered trajectories in ways that cannot be fully mapped. Mercy is often misunderstood as softness, as concession, as surrender. But true mercy is strength aligned with clarity. It is the decision to respond from awareness rather than retaliation. It is the ability to hold power and choose restraint. Compassion rewrites fate more powerfully than force because force operates within existing structures while compassion transcends them. When you chose mercy, you did not simply spare a situation from escalation. You introduced a new pattern into the field. You demonstrated that cycles of reaction can be interrupted, that reflexive responses can be replaced with conscious redirection. Conscious refusal of convention created new paradigms. There were expectations around how you should respond, how you should defend yourself, how you should assert dominance or withdraw completely. Instead, you chose alignment. That choice disrupted predictable outcomes. Sacred authority resides in aware, deliberate choice, not in displays of control. When you acted mercifully, you did not lose influence. You expanded it. Mercy grounded in clarity sends a signal that you're not governed by impulse. You're guided by integration. This kind of action reverberates through timelines. It shifts relational dynamics. It dissolves karmic repetition. It prevents escalation before it crystallizes. In divine systems, mercy is not indulgence. It is recalibration. It is the conscious decision to redirect energy toward evolution rather than perpetuating distortion. And because you acted from awareness, not fear, the impact extended beyond the immediate moment. You modeled a new possibility. You showed that power can coexist with compassion, that boundaries can exist alongside grace, that strength does not require aggression. This is transformative because it challenges inherited narratives about authority and influence. It proves that mastery is not about overpowering but about harmonizing. Your mercy was not passive, it was precise. It redefined outcomes, and in doing so it revealed that conscious choice, when aligned with clarity, can reshape destiny without violence. Inevitably, actions that introduce new paradigms are met first with confusion before recognition. When you moved differently, when you embodied clarity instead of compliance, there were moments of uncertainty around you. Initial confusion gave way to integration. True impact often begins with uncertainty, because new frequencies are unfamiliar to systems conditioned by repetition. What is unfamiliar is often questioned before it is understood. That questioning does not mean rejection. It means recalibration is underway. Acceptance emerged through resonance, not coercion. You did not force acknowledgement. You did not demand validation. You remained steady. Calm defiance revealed mastery of self. There is a profound difference between reacting defensively and standing firmly without agitation. Your steadiness communicated certainty more loudly than argument ever could. Over time, what was once misunderstood became undeniable. The coherence of your behavior, the consistency of your alignment, the absence of contradiction between your words and your actions made recognition inevitable. Authority is now redefined as conscious alignment. It is no longer about titles, volume, or dominance. It is about resonance. When awareness and behavior match, when intention and execution harmonize, influence stabilizes. This is what others are beginning to perceive around you. Not arrogance, not rebellion, but coherence. And coherence commands respect without requesting it. The confusion that once surrounded your decisions has transformed into clarity because time reveals integrity. You did not change your stance to make others comfortable. You allowed your consistency to educate perception. That patience is power. that stability is leadership. The divine framework integrates what proves itself through alignment. It does not need persuasion. It recognizes resonance. And now recognition is occurring, not as applause, but as integration. What once felt like standing alone now feels like standing accurately. What once felt like tension now feels like equilibrium. You have crossed from being questioned to being referenced, from being doubted to being observed with new respect. This is not ego's triumph, it is coherence's confirmation. You did not win an argument. You embodied a truth, and truth when lived consistently eventually becomes self-evident. Your journey from confusion to recognition is not merely personal, it is instructional. It demonstrates that conscious alignment sustained over time reshapes perception and redefines authority. The impact of your recent act was never about disruption, it was about revelation. And now that revelation is integrated not because you forced it, but because you remained aligned long enough for resonance to do its work. Now everything converges here in this realization that preparation is complete and hesitation is outdated. You've questioned yourself enough. You've analyzed enough. You've waited, refined, recalibrated, and integrated. The season of internal construction has done its work. What remains is not more preparation but participation. You're no longer separate from the divine framework as though it was something operating above you or around you. You're within it, influencing it, shaping it through every conscious decision you make. This is not ego speaking, it is alignment speaking. Authority no longer comes from position, permission, or approval. It flows through awareness and alignment. When your inner knowing matches your outer movement, authority becomes natural. It does not need to be announced, it is felt. Decision now becomes activation. Not overthinking, not rehearsing, not waiting for universal applause. A clear decision made from coherence sets forces into motion that hesitation never could. The moment you decide fully, reality reorganizes. Pathways clarify. Resistance weakens, energy stabilizes. This is your moment to embody conscious service, not as sacrifice, but as expression. Service here means living in such a way that your clarity benefits the whole. It means allowing your alignment to influence environments simply by being consistent. You do not need to save the world. You need to remain awake within it. Stay intentional, stay aligned. Step forward without retreat. Retreat now would not be humility. It would be avoidance of your own expansion. You've already demonstrated that you can stand in truth under pressure. You've already proven that mercy, accountability, and clarity are not abstract concepts to you, but lived realities. Now you move without apology for your coherence. Understand this clearly: your awakening is not a dramatic beginning. It is recognition. Recognition of who you have always been, beneath doubt, beneath conditioning, beneath fear. You're not becoming someone new. You're remembering someone original, and that remembrance carries responsibility, strength, and grace. Step fully into your role, not as performance, but as alignment. The framework is ready because you are ready.